It's time for this week's Duhcast with myself, Dennis Farrell, and James Ellsworth, with special guest this week, Matt Stryker. Before we roll into this week's podcast, I want to say thank you, because BlueChew.com has become a monthly sponsor of this and the Wrestling Perspective on the same feed. Without you, the fans, going above and beyond using the promo code Ellsworth, they would not have stuck around. If you listen to anything with the word Conrad Thompson on it, you notice that Blue Chew kind of comes in and out, and they do a cycle with different podcasts. With us, they're sticking around for months now, and we couldn't have done that without you, the great fans. So please keep up the work. It's $5 for shipping and handling, and you get a free shipment. So let me start from the beginning. This episode of the Duhcast with James Ellsworth and myself is brought to you by BlueChew.com. That's blue as in the color blue. BlueChew.com brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know they work. Visit BlueChew.com. You get your first shipment free. You just use the special promo code Ellsworth and just pay $5 shipping. Trust me, it works. I'm not reading off a paper right now. I am telling you it works. I've used it. I don't need it, but I used it. I use it as an enhancement, okay? You guys listen and may go, oh, I don't need it. But think of hitting 400-foot home runs, right? And you're happy and you're trotting around and the women are like, oh, man, he can hit the ball far. Then you take a Blue Chew and you're hitting them 550 feet. Now, SportsCenter is picking you up. That's what Blue Chew does for your bedroom activities. I can't tell you enough. Look, I am, let's just say, I would have been a mid-carder in the bed, in the WWE level. I get the job done. I'm happy. Am I playing for any championships? No. Am I cheating to win sometimes? Hey, we all have to get to whatever it takes to get the job done. But with Blue Chew, that's not the case. With Blue Chew, you are like the Jinder Mahal of sexual activities, okay? You go from an unknown to a jobber to winning one match, and now you're the champion for almost a year. That's what it is with Blue Chew. You're the Jinder Mahal of wrestling. So go to BlueChew.com. It is a performance-enhancing drug. Look, your lady's not going to give you a piss test, so you can use all the performance-enhancing drugs as you want, okay? Blue Chew brings, as I said, the first FDA-approved ingredients that are in Viagra and Cialis. It's chewable. It works twice as fast. I popped one, chewed it, hopped in the shower, came out, and I was ready to go. You can take it day or night. You can take it on an empty or full stomach. They're chewable. It works, so you don't have to worry about that. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door in a discreet package, so no in-person doctor visits, no waiting in a pharmacy, and best of all, no more awkwardness. It's straight to your door, straight to your mouth, and straight to bed, baby. Right now, we've got a special, as I said, for all of our listeners, all of our great listeners who have kept Blue Chew around. Go to BlueChew.com. Get your first shipment free with the special promo code Ellsworth. As I said, just pay $5 shipping, baby. That's Blue Chew, BLUE Chew.com. Use the promo code Ellsworth. It's free, $5 shipping and handling. It keeps the lights on in the podcast studio and keeps the lights off in the bedroom, baby. Now it's time for the Duhcast. This week, Matt Stryker. All right, James Ellsworth, it's the Duhcast this week. You, me, and a special guest, Matt Stryker. James, first of all, how's your week been?
Oh, it's been great, man. Had a good week. I'm excited to have Matt on. I'm a big fan of Matt's work, and I'm very, very pleased and honored to be talking to him today on the Duhcast.
Matt Stryker,
what's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Listen, I got to tell you, I was very impressed because my first time I ever got a chance to meet with you and sit down, you were really down-to-earth, approachable person, and something you don't really see a lot with wrestling athletes nowadays. How was that instilled into you?
Well, I guess it comes from the way I was raised. I was raised in a family of all women, and I had two great male role models, my father and my grandfather. And they really, really taught me how to be. But I think beyond that, what you're noticing is a lot of people in wrestling these days, they love themselves. They really do. It's all about them and their T-shirts and their, come see me next. And I'm just not like that. I subscribe to the fact that at the end of the chess game, the king and the pawn both go back into the same box. No one is any better than anyone else. No one ever won a championship in wrestling. It was bestowed upon them. Hulk Hogan did not slam Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant let Hulk Hogan slam him. So things like that. There's a humility to it.
Now, while James apparently is making dinner or lunch, or are you making a mixed drink over there, James?
Don't worry about what I'm doing. This is a PG podcast, and I'm not gonna say what I'm doing here because it's some very, very good adult stuff.
All right. Well,
I wish it was a scratch and sniff podcast so we could smell what he was doing.
Oh, okay, Rock. Back down for a second. I have to ask you. You Lucha Underground, New Japan, AAA. I mean, a handful of other places. At what point in your wrestling career did you kind of think, maybe going to the booth isn't so bad, or it was something you wanted to do?
I've never looked at any opportunity I was ever given as something that I didn't want to do or something that was beneath me. I always saw every movement as lateral. So when Vince McMahon tells you to do something, you say yes before he even finishes the sentence, because if you don't, someone else will. I had been doing wrestling commentary since I was a little kid with my G.I. Joe wrestling. I had a wrestling federation with my action figures. It's always something I've been doing. I've always kept to myself, never had a lot of friends, still don't. So it was just an extension of 7-year-old Matthew.
Now, let's get into some wrestling politics. Lucha Underground to me has been one of the hottest organizations out there. I mean, let's just take the WWE out of the equation because they're tops. They're number one. They don't even need to be discussed. But in the realm of Ring of Honor, New Japan, Impact, Lucha Underground just seems to be one of these organizations that have thrived with much less than anybody else. And how much do you contribute Netflix to that success?
You faded out there. How much do we contribute to what?
Netflix to that success.
I definitely think that the platform certainly helps the situation and helps the program. But the difference with Lucha Underground and all those other places that you mentioned is Lucha Underground is backed and produced by MGM. It's a television show about a wrestling company. It is not an independent wrestling company that got a TV deal. That's the big difference. There are actors and there are stuntmen, and yes, it happens to be in the genre of wrestling, but it's a television show the same way Breaking Bad is a television show. So when you throw something like that on Netflix and it exposes the television show to more eyes and more viewers, of course that's going to help. But I think it's the quality of the writing of the television show, quality of the acting and the stunts and the special effects and the production that makes the show enjoyable to watch for many people across the board, not just wrestling fans.
What was
man, I don't know if you remember the Wrestling Society X. I think it happened about 15 years ago. That's what Lucha Underground kind of reminds me of. It was on MTV for a little bit. I think they did one season. It was fun to watch, but it didn't last past that one season. And Lucha Underground, it kind of reminds me of that, but they're doing obviously a better job of staying around and putting on shows that people are enjoying. Do you remember that Wrestling Society X at all?
Yes, I remember Wrestling Society X, and I just think that places like Wrestling Society X and all those other places, they were independent wrestling shows that got TV deals. Lucha Underground, I don't consider it a wrestling show. I think it's a television show about an underground wrestling company, and if you watch the show, the wrestling is the least part of the storyline.
Right.
It's the ancient Aztec gods, and it's the time traveling, and it's the owner and his quest to rule the world, and it's a television show. and the wrestling is just happens to be. It's almost like, I think, what was it? Was it Saved by the Bell or Boy Meets World had a wrestling episode?
Boy Meets World with Vader, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and Topanga was hot. But yeah, you know, that's how I look at Lucha Underground. So I do remember Wrestling Society X. I just don't. I see them as apples and oranges.
Yeah,
with the exception of Vampiro. He's the rotten banana that ties it all together.
Wrestling Society X was a little bit ahead of their times. I think if they were to launch now in this entity of independent wrestling and media, I think they would have been wildly successful.
Yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen, but in the absence of that, there are other companies that can take advantage.
Back to Lucha Underground, what was the pitch like to bring you on as a commentator? The way you explain it is interesting, but when they came to you, did they explain it to you kind of the same way, and what was your reaction to it?
So I had been released by WWE, and I was heartbroken. You know, that's breaking up with the girl of your dreams. And now I'm a faith guy, and this might not be for everybody, but I recall it like it was yesterday. I was sitting on my couch, and I dropped to my knees, and I prayed. I just prayed that, you know, I'd be able to keep my house and find something that I could do. And I'm not being funny, guys. As soon as I wiped the tears from my face and got back on the couch, the phone rang, and it was an old writer from WWE. And they were very honest. They said, listen, we're in a jam. You weren't our first choice. The person that we wanted to use as commentary has passed on the opportunity. Can you be on a flight tomorrow out to LA? And you didn't have to hit me over the head. I had just got done praying. I was like, yeah, I get this. I understand. Yeah. And I got on the plane, and I arrived in Los Angeles, and the executives, and remember, these aren't wrestling people. The executives were so appreciative of the fact that, you know, 16 hours ago, they asked me if I could get on a plane, and I showed up, and I was willing to do whatever they want. And I remember the first episode, I went out there in the wrestling announcer mode, in my silly little vest and tie, and my announcer voice. And after the first episode, I went back into the little office, and I was like, you know something, man? I got to do this differently. And I put on a T-shirt and a leather jacket, and then I looked over at Vampiro, and he was like sleeping. And I said, this is how we have to do this. And from there, it just took off. But it was a phone call after a moment of prayer. And, you know, they say don't ask for signs, so I didn't ask for a sign, but that was for one.
In wrestling, you see a lot of people turn to religion after their runs, you know, is kind of a way to atone from their past sins. You have been a guy who's very open with his religion, and you've done it in your successes, in, as you said, in your failures, and back at being on top. How important is religion to you in your wrestling career?
Well, I think religion is a bad word because religion is man-made. I think faith is the word. Just believe in something. And I've had faith since I was a little kid, even before I ever knew what it was. I was never indoctrinated into any particular religion, but I always just, even if I'm crazy and I'm wrong, I always felt that there was something bigger than me, something guiding me. And as long as I could honor that and respect that and never put anything above that, I'm going to be okay. I had a bunch of instances in my life at a younger age that, I mean, I was born with an umbilical cord around my neck. I was molested when I was a kid. I was nearly kidnapped. There are things that you look back at and you say, I shouldn't be here right now. So everything else, listen, my thing is I woke up this morning. Everything else is downhill. So I always had faith, and I always had a humility that I am not the most important thing in the world. And I see a lot of people in wrestling, and man, oh man, do they love themselves. And I find myself being repelled by that. So just having a faith and having a peace and an awareness of something bigger than me, that's been with me all my life, even long before wrestling, and it'll be with me until I don't wake up. So there's that.
James, if you're not done grocery shopping, you can jump in here.
Oh, yeah, I was just waiting for you to shut up, Dennis. Like, that's how I have to handle the show here, Matt. Like, I just wait for him to get all of his stuff in, and then I finally chime in. That's how Duckcast works, I guess. But anyway, Matt, yeah, like I've been a fan of yours for a while, and we never really met, or I met you a few times, but we never really talked. I got to talk to you last Tuesday there in Detroit. Had a good time chatting with you and just having fun with you down there. I'm sure like people listening, they might not know your story or just curious how you got into business, where you trained, who trained you, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know you could get into the sport. I thought you were just, and I said this, I thought you was born Ric Flair. I had no idea that, and you can relate to this, that a 5'0" barely 200-pound kid for me, it's from Queens, New York, could get into this. But I had a great relationship with my father that I mentioned, and growing up, he always told me that his father would watch wrestling, and whenever a guy named Johnny Rods would come on the television, my father's father, my grandfather, would take his shoe off and throw it at the TV. So as a little kid, that picture in your mind of Grandpa throwing his shoe at the TV sticks with you. Fast forward a few years later, I'm in the gym working out, and this was long before everyone had a wrestling T-shirt on. Some kid was wearing a wrestling T-shirt. And I was like, whoa, wrestling. I like wrestling. You like wrestling? And the next day he came into the gym with the infancy of the internet, a very crude printout of some wrestling schools in our area. And the second name on the list was Johnny Rod's School of Wrestling. And again, it goes back to faith. You don't have to hit me over the head. I get it. This is where I'm supposed to go. And I remember I drove to Johnny Rod's school in Brooklyn, New York. I drove around the building 10 times, getting up the courage to go in there. Finally, I went in there, and divine wind, everything just fell into place. I started training with Johnny Rods, and the rest is history.
What happened to the kid you trained with?
To the guys I've trained with?
Or to the kid that introduced you to the school in the
yeah. He went on to wrestle as a pit dog. We did a few matches on the independent scene, and I never heard from him after that. And it's interesting because there's a lot of guys out there that have trained and then for whatever reason, maybe they had kids or maybe they just didn't do it. They didn't stick with it. It's just like anything else. I was fortunate that this was, for whatever reason, I still haven't figured out, that this was my destiny. And so I stuck with it. And, here I still am by the grace of God. Don't ask me how or why, but here I still am.
As we're going to wrap this up here in a few minutes, I have to say, one of my favorite questions to ask wrestlers is, what is your after plan? We've seen from the 70s, the 80s, and early 90s, sometimes they didn't have a plan. You surprised me when you told me you were getting into fantasy hockey with RotoWire.
Yeah, I've been a big fantasy baseball and fantasy hockey guy for the better part of the last, seems like a decade. And I fell in with the guys with RotoWire and FanDuel, and I'll be joining the RotoWire podcast with Paul Bruno and AJ Scholes. We'll be talking about fantasy hockey coming up in the coming weeks, and then eventually, God willing, for the baseball season moving forward, I'll be a regular contributor as well. I've always been a huge baseball and hockey fan. Deep, though, not just, listen, I know a lot of wrestlers that are fantasy football guys, but they only know what they see on ESPN. They have no idea beyond that. But as far as baseball and hockey goes, I've always been a nerd when it comes to this. So if you can make money with daily fantasy on FanDuel every single day, I play daily fantasy baseball now, and it's like a second income. If you know the game, you can make money at this. And a lot of degenerate gamblers will tell you that, So, I'm really happy that I'm moving forward into the fantasy sports world, and we'll see where that takes me.
Well, Matt, my last question for you, and look, I had to cut Dennis off again because that's what I have to do to get a word in on here. You're doing really well with Lucha Underground, like we talked about, and you're down there at AAA as well and doing stuff with MLW. Do you ever feel like there's one more WWE run left as far as maybe in-ring action or even like commentary? Do you want another run at WWE in the future?
I still wrestle because I still enjoy it. And if that phone call came Who's going to no? Listen, anyone that tells you that they're going to say no is lying.
Lying,
with the exception of a handful of people, because it's the major leagues of wrestling, and I love what I'm doing with MLW because MLW is treating wrestling like a sport. I love what I'm doing with Lucha Underground because it allows me to break into the acting world. WWE is entertainment. The E is there. So if they do call for in-ring, or if they call for commentary, if they call for agenting, whatever they would call for, if my contracts allow me, of course I would, because the money is fantastic, the opportunities are fantastic, and in spite of what anyone says, Vince McMahon and Paul Levesque, those guys, those are some of the most benevolent, generous guys that I've ever worked with. Even if I never go back there again, I don't have a bad word to say about them because they bought me 3 houses. They allow me to. I'm here in Cape Cod on vacation. That lifestyle has been afforded to me because of the opportunities with WWE. So yes, of course I would.
And my final question is here, you're a New York guy, you're recording this interview on 9/11. Can you tell me your 9/11 story?
It's funny. I wasn't going to bring it up, but before we got on the line, I was looking at social media, and I think the number one trend right now is Bachelor in Paradise. And I think that's the most pathetic thing that today, nowadays, that's the number one trend. And I'm looking at a lot of people's social media feeds today. And yeah, they'll do the obligatory, always remember, or whatever. And I saw, James, you had a great social media post. I thought it was very insightful and very heartfelt. So, but there are so many people out there, though. They made one little post at 10 o'clock this morning, and then they're off to, hey, come check me out in Shreveport as I take down this guy, or buy my T-shirt, or, follow my... It's disgusting that anyone is thinking of anything other than what happened 17 years ago. I remember it vividly. I watched it on television with my father. And then it was a very nice day in New York. It was warm, and I was driving I lived by the beach. I was driving to the beach, and there was traffic everywhere, and people were just like making eye contact with each other, smiling at each other, nodding at each other, just shaking our heads back and forth. We were all completely united. And then later on that night, and I'm telling on myself here, but I was a lot younger, my friend Jay and I, there are these 3 huge buildings on the Cross Island Parkway where I lived. And we went up to the top, broke into the roof. We went to the top of the building, and we rolled up a blunt, a pot. We smoked pot, and we sat there and we watched all the ashes from Manhattan cover all the cars in Queens. It spread all the way over, and I'll never forget just watching those buildings burn for days upon days. And I just think it's amazing that here we are 17 years later, and everyone forgets. Everyone forgets, and that we're all well and good. Go ahead and forget. But you know something? There are people out there that their lives changed completely, and they never are going to forget. So those are my memories from that day, and even today. Listen, it is what it is, but we'll see what happens. That's all I can say.
James, what is your memories from 9/11?
Well, I think that was very well said what Matt just touched on, and Matt he's just a great speaker, and that's why he's had such longevity in the business. Like the words just flow so well, and I could listen to you talk all day, Matt. My memories 9/11 personally though, like I was in high school, and I remember they shut the school down, and we had to go home, and I had a skateboard, and I skateboarded home, and I was just sitting there with my dad. This is before the second plane hit. And we sat there and watched the second plane hit live on TV, like right on television. And like right there, my thoughts were, wow, this is going to be a war. Like I thought for sure, like more planes, and one did hit the Pentagon, and one did go down in Pennsylvania. But I thought like that all day we were going to see planes that were in the air already hit buildings. That's what was going through my head. Like, oh my God, this is going to happen until every plane that's supposed to hit a building is done with. And obviously they shut all the flights down and everything, but I remember being 16 years old, just scared out of my mind that just planes were going to hit buildings all day. Wow. Very, very scary.
For me, it was...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go, no, you after you.
No, please. What were your memories? What were your thoughts?
I had just gotten divorced for the first time, by the way. I moved
Smart woman.
Yeah, very smart. And it was actually the night before I was working nights, my first night on the job at Ford Motor Company. I'm still there to this day, thank God. And it was a weird event because I had met a girl and I agreed to go out with her. She had called me after all this stuff went down, and it was sad. And I was in St. Louis at the time. It was sad, depressing. It was shocking because for Matt and I, this was our Kennedy assassination of our generation. We're a little bit older than you were, James, at the time, but I guess we're still kind of in the same age group there, where you were in school, we were, working real life jobs, moving on to our second life as working men. I went out with this girl and I had to stop and get gas. And at that point, I saw that gas was at $17 a gallon. And I didn't have a penny to my name. So I had to call her from a payphone at that time, very widely still used. And she had to come pick me up. And we went back to her place and spent the next 8 hours watching this coverage. I don't know how to explain. It was amazing to see people come together. The loss was heartbreaking, and at the same time, it was inspiring to see the days to come that, maybe we're not Democrats or Republicans or white and black, that we're just people trying to make it through another day, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And even now, fast forward, you make a great point. Every time you turn on the TV, most of the channels at least, they're trying to divide us. And there are people that seem to hate what this country stands for. But we're all patriots, and we should be, because, listen, James, you and I, we've traveled around the world, and there is no place like this country. While I'm sure that there
100%.
are definitely some systemic issues, and I get that, but for me, I travel every weekend. I make it a point to tell every single TSA agent that I come in contact with, thank you, appreciate what you're doing for us. I make sure to nod and make eye contact with every law enforcement officer. And when there's military in the airport, they have their guns out drawn, I nod and I let them know just for 2 seconds. I don't care what's on the TV and I don't care what they tell us. Those men and women out there, that is a thankless job, and they are risking their lives because of something that happened 17 years ago. And it's again, you got to put perspective. Everyone loves themselves. Everyone, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. For one day 17 years ago, nobody cared about themselves. And I think that's a mentality we need to move towards now more than ever.
I'm glad you came by, because James and I, before we were talking about pre-show, we both agreed that the majority of this show should be about 9/11. We're a wrestling podcast. We celebrate the wrestlers, the stories, and this is something that, as you kind of said, as the years go on, we become numb to the feelings we felt on that day, and I don't know how we get it back. How do we rally the people back?
It's terrible because of the way that media and the world, they're trying to divide us. People, it's easier to conquer people when they're divided, but there is a large section of this country that is united, and it sucks because it's going to take a tragedy, and in wrestling, it's going to take a real bad guy to unite everyone, but sometimes the person that they tell us is the bad guy is not really the bad guy. What's happening to society as a whole? Look at what social media is doing. The words, like this, follow that. Those are not words that we need. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think you need to do away with social media completely. I think you need to do away with the 24-hour news cycle. People just need to get back to basics. Get back to loving your family, or saying, wow, I woke up this morning. Things like that. Looking across at your mother or your wife or your daughter or your husband, and appreciating them. Or go outside and just look up at the stars in the sky and realize you are not the most important thing. It's humility. That's what's going to bring people together. And sadly, humility is fleeting in this day and age. At least in the country that I'm observing.
James, can I ask him one more question before we let him go?
I'm sure he's tired of listening to you, but I love listening
man,
to
I got
Matt.
all the time in the world for you.
Go ahead, Matt.
Let's bring this back to wrestling just for one more second and talk about CW.
Yeah, why not?
Well, just for 1 second, talk about CWL. When we talk about people putting it out on the line, and I'm not comparing this in any way to what we were just talking about, but this young kid that I was introduced to at the same time I met you is a guy who saved up every dime for 12 years, starts his wrestling league, CWL. He hires you to be a commentator. We go out and do a press conference. It wasn't as successful as we had hoped, but to see this kid scrap, sell tickets, I watched as you, James Ellsworth, and Brian Pillman Jr. went above and beyond and did things you didn't have to do to help promote outside of what the agreement was. And you had told, and you were very vocal, that you want to see this guy succeed. So let's, for a second, because he's become a friend of mine now, I want to see him succeed. You want to see him succeed. What drew you to Championship Wrestling League?
Again, it's one of those things where it's the divine winds that blow. I got the phone call, and I decided to take the phone call, and I just started talking to the owner. And I heard the passion in his voice. I heard the love of pro wrestling. And to bring it back, you're talking about what do we take to unite us, whatever. You look out at wrestling crowds, and it's an older guy sitting next to a young kid, or it's a person of color sitting next to a transgender person. We don't care who you are. All we know is that we're united for our love of pro wrestling. And I heard the passion in the owner's voice. I heard how much he loved pro wrestling. And it was refreshing to me because that is lost. Everyone, again, yeah, we love pro wrestling. No, you don't. You love your T-shirt sales, or you love putting up videos of yourself. You don't love pro wrestling. You love yourself. And I'm not afraid to say that. So when this young man came to me, his passion for pro wrestling, his ideas, in spite of the fact that he wants to use James, which I don't think anyone should do. I'm just kidding. Rehire Ellsworth so that he won't be on any of the independents. But I just think that his passion is what was attractive to me, and I want to be around people that love the same things I do. And if it fails, at least this kid can go to sleep and say I gave it my all. But it's not going to fail because he has passion. And he has faith, and he has a desire. And Championship Wrestling League, I think, is going to be something that is going to be incredibly successful.
I can't wait to see you when you come out, become better friends, hopefully. ChampionshipWrestlingLeague.com. Go out there if you're in Ohio or Michigan, or if you're in Illinois and you want to drive a couple hours to see some great wrestling. You'll get to meet Matt Stryker, Big Cass, MVP. Zach Gowen will be there. The list goes on and on. He has put together one of the most impressive rosters I've seen. I don't know. Do you call this a TV show, or is this part of the independent circuit? How would you even describe this?
Well, James, he was telling you and I that he does have a television deal. So I'd have to see how it's going to play out. I've learned one thing in our sport. Just when you think you've got all the answers, someone changes the question. Roddy Piper taught me that. So I want to see how it plays out, but I just know it's going to be someone that loves wrestling. I mean, James, what do you think?
Well, Matt, I know you touched on people loving the seller T-shirts and loving themselves, and you mentioned Rehire Ellsworth. I'd get you a Rehire Ellsworth T-shirt, but they're all sold out. I'm sorry. My apologies.
It's getting icy on the podcast.
But yeah,
No worries.
But yeah, the kid from Detroit with the CWL, like you were saying, Matt, he does have a lot of passion. He's a nice guy. He's doing something very unique where he has, I think it's 12 high schools that he's doing for 12 straight Saturdays, 12 different high schools. And I think that's pretty cool, and I think it's going to succeed. Like he's been saving for a while. This is his dream. He's really, really put a lot of time and effort and money into this, and I too think it'll succeed just because he's really planned for this for a long time, and he loves it, and this is his baby. He's gonna want it to succeed, and I think he's got a lot of people around him that are willing to help him, and good people, and I really think it's going to succeed as well, and I can't wait to be a part of it in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and in lieu of some rehire Ellsworth shirts, I'll gladly take some Blue Chews instead. How about that?
BlueChew.com. Use the promo code Ellsworth.
There you go.
There it is.
And Matt, if people, let's not use the word follow here. If people want to keep up with your everyday social media activities, how do people do that?
Well, I'm on the Twitter at Matt_Striker_, but I'll be honest, I do not tweet a lot about wrestling outside of Lucha Underground or MLW. I will be tweeting more and more about fantasy hockey and fantasy baseball. So if you're interested in that, by all means, come and say hi. If not, no hard feelings.
Hey, let me ask you, what's this whole Steve Yzerman stepping down as the GM of the Lightning? How is that going to affect the Lightning? And maybe next year, if the rumors are true that he comes over to Detroit, what do you see?
Yeah, that's the rumor that Detroit wants him back. I don't think it affects the Lightning in any way. Although Stevie Y has been instrumental in building that club, I think that they are built for the next few seasons, especially with some of the pickups that they got at the trade deadline last year, former New York Rangers like JT Miller and the sort. But I think the pieces are in place in Tampa, but it'll be interesting to see because Detroit has suffered a bit, and it would be interesting to see if Stevie Y goes back there, if he can bring back the glory days of the Nicholas Lidstroms and the rest of the world. But it remains to be seen. Sometimes I wonder if there's more to this story or not, but I don't want to speculate.
James, why don't you say goodbye?
Well, Matt, it was great talking to you. I think you guys the last 45 seconds have been speaking gibberish to our listeners. And to every listener on the Dougcast, I apologize. I understand if you turned it off while they were talking about that. I'm a hockey fan as well, but I do get it's not the most popular sport in the U.S. But yeah, Matt, again, it was great talking to you. It was great meeting you last week. I truly am a big fan of yours, and I'm very happy I finally got to meet you and talk to you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you for having me, and I got to tell you something, man. I think that what you do and did on WWE is absolutely fantastic, and I think that there is a spot for you on WWE in a lot of different ways, and I think that the longer you're not under contract there, it's a loss for them because you've got something special, man, and you could take it on the chin, no pun intended. So I hope to see you back there sooner rather than later.
I appreciate that, Matt. It means a lot coming from you.
James, that was a great, insightful interview with Matt Striker. And look, honestly, behind the scenes, I had asked you if I could take command of this interview. I'm a Matt Striker fan. You were generous to kind of step back and let me be a nerd with him. So thank you for letting me do that.
Oh, I love listening to you be a nerd. I get a good laugh out of it, Dennis. I think we all do here on the Dougcast.
As we wrap this up, I have to ask you, we talked about this kid earlier starting a promotion. You are a guy now who has been running a successful promotion in Baltimore way before WWE was even a dream. You've gone through the pitfalls of what this kid's going through. What was it like for you? Let's even start 2 weeks before you even started your first show. What's that like? What was the troubles you had to go through?
Well, honestly, like when Adrenaline Championship Wrestling started, it was under a different owner in 2009. He owned it till about 2011, early 2012 when I took it over. He was, the shows weren't being successful, meaning they weren't drawing money. Like, he wasn't making money off the shows, and I got to be friends with a lot of guys there, and he was just going to kind of not run shows anymore. And I was like, oh, no, I can take it over and see what I can do with it. First show I did made, a four-figure profit, and I was like, whoa, I just made thousands of dollars. Let me try to run another one. Same thing happened, and the same thing, I was like, man, maybe this is my calling. Maybe I'm just a, small business independent wrestling promoter. Maybe that's what I'm doing. Maybe that's what I'm good at in wrestling. Maybe it's and that, like, it just took off from there. And, we're still doing well. I'm very blessed. I'm booked a lot on the independents. WWE, they brought me back this summer for about 6-7 weeks, and so I got a lot going on. I'm very busy, and I'm very blessed, and I know it. I'm very aware of it. How lucky I am to be so busy in the wrestling business and doing so well. And That meant a lot to me what Matt Striker just said at the end there, that he thinks I have a big upside. And, you feel those things inside of you and that's inside your head, but I try to stay a humble guy and not say stuff like that. So for someone who I really respect like Matt and who's been around forever, and like he's a jack of all trades in the wrestling business. He can do commentary, he can cut a promo, he can wrestle a really good scientific wrestling match. It means a lot coming from him, what he just said at the end of the conversation there, and I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, this kid, like I said, he's a young kid. I think he's 25, 26 years old. That's bringing out the CWL, and I told him, when I met him last week, because I really thought he was a nice guy. If you ever needed any help or advice from me, please feel free to text me, call me, or whatever, because I respect people that, follow their dreams and follow their passion. That's what he's doing, putting this CWL together, and I hope it goes very far.
Before we wrap this up, is there anything else you want to touch on that we haven't even talked about yet?
Yeah, man, I'm getting a lot of tweets here, and I'll touch on this because I'm sure a lot of people want my opinion on this. Like, with Carmella coming out with R-Truth the last couple of weeks, people are asking, "Oh man, are you upset?" And no, of course not. Like, Carmella's awesome, man. Like, we became friends while I'm there, and her title reign just ended at SummerSlam, and she moved on to the next thing. She's still on TV every week, and she should be. She's awesome, and I'm always, like, I said it here before on the Dougcast, I'm always going to be a homer to her. And R-Truth, man, I have nothing but respect for the guy. He's a great guy. The few times I did get to be around him, he was always very cool, and man, he's another guy, longevity. I think he's like 50 years old now. If I'm saying that and it's wrong, I'm sorry, but and he's in great shape. He still entertains the crowd, and they're partners in a mixed match challenge, and I'm happy for both of them. For me, like, my legacy at WWE is not always going to be, oh, he was the guy with Carmel. Like, I do plan on going back there and doing some more stuff, and like adding on to what the James Ellsworth character's already accomplished. I'm very blessed to where I accomplished a lot there, but I'm not at all satisfied with what all I've done. Like, I do want to do more, and I do want to build on what I've already accomplished, and that's going to take time, and it's going to take patience, and it's going to take the right scenario. But I promise you that's my goal, is to get back there and continue my own legacy. And so I'm nothing but happy for Carmella and whatever she accomplishes going forward. And if that doesn't include me, I'm not going to be bitter about it. If it does include me, I'd always be happy to work with her. But yeah, just getting a lot of tweets about that, man. So I just wanted to touch on it real quick. No bitterness here. Like Matt Stricker said, I woke up this morning. Everything's cool at the end of the day. And I am grocery shopping because my daughter has a bellyache, and I'm out here at 10:30 p.m. getting her some medicine because that's my little girl, man. I'm not going to let her be sick.
R-Truth is 46, and before I let you go, I do want to say, if anything, it opens up our opportunities, because if this Carmella R-Truth thing is even slightly as successful as what yours and hers are, there's going to be an opportunity for you to come back, whether you're jealous character-wise or you're helping somebody else out. There's this only opens up opportunities if this is successful.
Well, here's the thing, man, and I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. I love playing the James Ellsworth character. Like, it's so much fun. He's different from everything else on the show. It happened out of nowhere. I was a extra talent that they had no plans of signing, and I did a match with Strowman, and people started talking about it. Then they brought me back. People started talking more. Then, I was very lucky that they brought me back again, and people started talking more, and it turned into what it was. And so it was never a planned thing, man. So, and it's still not, So who knows what the future holds? But I'll, work very hard, keep doing what I'm doing, and do everything I can to get back there and continue the James Ellsworth name and legacy, and hopefully build on it. And I'll work very hard to accomplish that and make it happen.
All right. I'll do my promotion part after we hang up, but quickly promote, where can people find you coming up this week? What do you have booked? What's going on with James Ellsworth?
I'm going to be in Tennessee this week. You can check all that out, man, on Real Ellsworth, at Real Ellsworth on Twitter, James Ellsworth Wrestling on Instagram. I always put up where I'm going to be performing and all that. The next Adrenaline Championship Wrestling show is in Hanover, Pennsylvania, where I take on Jerry the King Lawler for the third time this year. We're tied at 1 win apiece. This is the rumble match, as they would say. That's September the 28th, Hanover, Pennsylvania. AdrenalineWrestling.com to see James Ellsworth take on the King one more time. We're gonna finally put this 2018 rivalry. Him and I have had to rest. There must be a winner, and somebody is gonna win this rivalry 2-1. So check that out. And AdrenalineWrestling.com. Again, I'm going to say that again. AdrenalineWrestling.com. So people get it in their heads to go there and get tickets for that show.
As far as the Wrestling Perspective goes, go to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. 2 great shows, 1 free feed. You go over there, you subscribe, click on the pictures. All the links to everywhere we are there. You can Google Wrestling Perspective or hashtag Dougcast. Will pop up. All we ask is you to subscribe. That's it. Hopefully you will keep growing. We've had some amazing guests. James is gone now, so it's just me and you. Don't end the podcast just yet. But I do want to say, thank you to everybody. Go out there, Rail Ellsworth, Dennis 77 Farrell, Matt Stryker already promoted his. I do want to give a special thanks because I did not get a chance to ask any of the fan questions. So I truly apologize to anybody who took the time to tweet me and wanted me to ask them something. But I do want to say thank you to the Irish Rip podcast guys. They've been amazing for doing some logos for us, talking to some people. If you are a wrestling fan and you're looking for something new, just go over, check them out. They're good people, friends of our podcast. I don't give too many shout outs of other podcasts on here. So when I do, I want it to be special, and that is special. So Dougcast, Wrestling Perspective. We're on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at WP_P pod. That's the official handle of the podcast. Once again, thank you, Matt Stryker. Thank you to James Ellsworth, who, as you listened, didn't have to do it, but he did the podcast while grocery shopping, and I believe maybe while driving, and depending on what you thought at the top of the show, murder. I don't know, but he has had a busy 40-something minutes. So thank you guys so much. As you know, we released early the Wrestling Perspective this week, so this is the last podcast for this week. Thank you, and we'll talk to you later.